You're listening to the Sales Today podcast, and I'm your host, Fred Copestake. On this podcast, we explore how sales professionals can develop a more modern approach to selling, the application of virtual and hybrid selling techniques, how to create meaningful business relationships, and much more. And welcome to the Sales Today podcast and a special Selling in the Golf episode, where I'm delighted to be joined by Anirvan Sen. Now, Anirvan is founder and CEO of Fifth Chrome, which is a business advisory and training company, and he specializes in merger and acquisitions and business integration. However, previously, Anirvan worked with GE, where he was in the golf for 6 years and getting involved in, what did you tell me? So,
strategic initiatives.
Strategic initiatives. I can't even read my own writing. It looks like fancy initiatives, which I guess that they were. So Anirvan,
Absolutely, yeah.
Fancy initiatives. He did some fancy initiatives. Anirvan, welcome. Sorry for the rubbish intro. Perhaps you could tell us a little bit more about what you were doing in that 6 years in the region and sort of some of the bigger accomplishments that make these things fancy.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, so essentially, when I took on the role in the Middle East region, I was head of quality for emerging markets in Europe, Middle East, and Africa. Then I got this role, which made me move to Dubai, and I was responsible for GE's expansion into this region, and that would mean setting up new countries, setting up operations, getting people involved, get them on board, etc. So that gave me a very, very deep understanding of Middle East, North Africa, Sub-Saharan Africa, as well as South Africa. So it was a very enriching moment for us. Before we started, we were roughly in about 8 countries and had 40 odd people. By the time I finished the role, we were in about 34 countries and had more than 300 people supporting us in the region. So that was quite nice. And then afterwards, I also ended up working. I still do a lot of work in that region. I ended up working with Majid Al Futtaim. That's one of the larger family-run retail group, or actually they are in multiple different businesses based out of Dubai. I also worked with a security company that provides perimeter securitization in the Middle East as well as in Sub-Saharan Africa. Then worked with the food and beverages company. They're one of the largest organic food traders in the world. So have a very, very good understanding of the region. So yeah, that's what I did in the region.
That's way more than fancy. That's impressive. No, that is really, really cool. So let's think about that. So when you think particularly about the region, what would you say are the biggest challenges that companies and organizations face?
Yeah, I think, we'll have to probably divide it into sort of 3 parts. The first part is the post-pandemic. The regions now started opening up along with the geopolitical situation with, of course, the initial trade war between China and the US, and now with Russia and Ukraine crisis. So it's having an impact. The kind of impact we have in Europe is very different from the kind of impact they're having in that part of the world. So that this phenomena has an impact. But if you were to look back prior to this pandemic, what a lot of Western companies fail, or what a lot of Western companies face as a challenge, is they believe that just because they see lots of fancy cars and lots of nice buildings, they think they have a lot of money and the money is up for grabs. The answer, or the reality is, there is a lot of money in that region, and for the right product, with the right relationship, one could make that money, but it's not something you can get overnight. It takes years to build relationships, especially this is a region which strongly believes in relationship first and then comes sales. So that would be one of the biggest challenges the company faces. The second thing I would highlight is this is not a singular culture region. This is a region where you've got the local Arabs. Let's say, for example, if you operate in GCC, you've got the Emiratis, you've got the Kuwaitis, the Bahrainis, and the Qatari, Omani, Yemeni, Saudi on one side. And then you've got the others like Egyptians, like Syrians, Lebanese, Palestinians. And then you've got the Maghrebi Arab, So this is just the Arab people. There's so much of variation between them, the way they approach businesses, the way they look at things. And then you've got the Indians, the Pakistanis, the Filipinos, the Chinese, the Iranians, Russians, and Western world, right? So it's a potpourri of culture. So what that means is you can see the same diversity at work. So it is entirely possible that you may have a head Emirati who is, in many cases, could be a nominal head or could be a really powerful guy, but the actual tactical work may be done by an Indian or maybe done by somebody from the West or, Filipino or somebody else. So what you find is the cultural dichotomy is highly pronounced. So just because you want to build a relationship with the top guy, you also need to think about if it's a European guy, who's actually running the operations, you need to culturally calibrate that. So that is something that a lot of companies struggle. So that would be my second challenge. The third is it is going to be that it's not consensus. So we're used to having consensus sales in the Western world, but it's not a single individual person making a decision. In the Middle East, on the other side, a lot of times the decisions actually get made either by a single individual or by a small group of people. It's never consensus based, small group of people, very powerful people who make the decision. If it's a state-run company or the royal family is involved in that business somehow, the decision-making process is very different compared to if it's an individual who is from the outside of the region but has been in the region for a long period of time. So that would be the third thing, which is keep in mind that it's not consensus-based. It is a few individuals, powerful individuals, influencers who make that decision. The fourth thing I would say is it's extremely relationship and patient business. In other words, when you go out, do not expect overnight success there. You need to dine with them, you need to work with them, you need to partner with them, collaborate with them before you actually get the sales. So that's another thing that we need to keep in mind. And then the other thing I would say is it's the Middle Eastern hospitality, and which could potentially be extended also to sort of India and Pakistan. Where if you as a salesperson go and speak to this person, right, there is this whole etiquette they follow, right? It is something that a lot of us in the Western world don't recognize and can't identify. They will be very respectful. They will always be guest first. They'll take that approach. That does not mean that they actually like you or they want to conduct business with you. It's just the mannerism, it's the etiquette that they're going through in order to have a conversation with you. So it is different. It is different from the way we know sales in the conventional, the Western world versus in that part of the world.
Oh,
Hope that helps.
brilliant.
Yeah.
No, no, really useful. I mean, you kind of preempted my second question, which is about how we, yeah, what is unique, and you've talked about that. So you have started to touch on what are the best companies and what do the best salespeople do to adapt to that. Now you've already started to indicate. I mean, relationship clearly a
Sure.
big one. So can you just talk a little bit more about the things that we can consciously do to
Yeah.
make sure we're doing the right thing?
Yeah. I mean, the relationship, I would divide it into two parts. The first part being it's a relationship. So you need to have people who are good at building relationship, not necessarily fancy sales guys or extrovert sales guys, talking sales guys, but people who actually can build relationships. The second thing is for the first timers, so people who are not very familiar with the region, you are better off with a partner because the partner will be able to open the doors for you. The partner will be able to help you navigate through how business needs to be conducted because this region is also very sensitive to cultural nuances. So, which means if you brush somebody the wrong way, unknowingly, that can be extremely detrimental to your business. And that's why when you go in, simple things like, for example, if you follow up with an individual right after, let's say, a week after the conversation, and you think that it's the right time to follow up, but the other party may not feel that's the right time to follow up, you will be in trouble because you will be then seen as pushy and trying to sort of jump the gun before the relationship has matured. And this is where again, kind of the partner, the local partner can help because these are the people who are likely to do some sort of backdoor diplomacy, open some conversations And this is how it operates in that region. Again, I'm not saying it's nebulous, it's convoluted. What I'm saying is this is the way business gets done. And relationship is an extremely important part.
Yeah. No, it's just interesting. I can, from what you said before, where you can imagine that somebody has had a wonderful response because somebody's actually just being polite. That's what they do. They're reaching out to their guest. You think this is great. They really like me. They really like what I'm selling. So then you follow up in a way which you think is advancing the sale, is moving it forward. And they're like, whoa, that's then damaging because you actually are perceived as being, as you say, pushy and sort of a bit rude. So when you talk about the relationship and great at building relationship, can you be a bit more specific about that? I mean, for me, there's a spectrum on this. Is like just being friends with people and understanding them, the family, and everything else. And then there's having contact with them where you're giving value, you're giving them extra stuff, you're helping with their job, you're showing your expertise in doing that, which is what we would tend to advise in selling. So, where do we fit on that spectrum then when we're working in the Middle East?
Right. And that's a great question. What you'd find is, unlike what we see in the West, where we tend to sort of compartmentalize personal relationships versus professional relationship, in the region, the boundary lines can get blurred. It's very usual when you meet up with somebody from the region, the first 5, 10, 15 minutes are going to be spent just on having personal conversations. They're likely to ask you about your kid, about your family, how well are you settling in, etc., till you get a signal that this person is ready to talk professionally. You don't jump the gun, right? So there's this whole personal thing or personal rapport building, which is extremely important. What they say is when you build good relationship, the chances of you getting cheated are less
Oh,
compared
right.
to a fly by night where you may be a smart sales guy and able to have a sales conversation, but if there's no relationship, you don't build the trust, and that's part of the game there.
So yeah, I can totally see that. You come along, you're using stuff which is very direct, and so I can see certainly. I mean, in the States, people are very direct. Europe, are pretty direct. Like when you say Europe, it's a bit like say, well, all those different countries,
Right,
they're all
right.
very different. But it's, yeah, we do often get to business fairly quickly. But what you're
Yes.
saying is, if you do that, well and good, but you will be perceived as transactional.
Yeah.
And okay, if you want to operate like that, we're going to operate like
Yeah.
that back. So it's take the time. It's an expression I use quite a lot. Slow down to speed up.
Exactly.
It's understand the person, be genuinely interested in them,
Yeah.
and be ready to share about yourself, which I think is what,
Yes.
again, some people can struggle with a little bit.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I've seen Europeans struggle because Europeans are not very forthcoming to share the personal information,
Yeah.
compared to even the Americans. They're quite okay to share how many kids they have, how big is the family. In the Middle East, the family values are given extreme importance. And that is something that one should be prepared to handle. I mean, sometimes we not even have sales conversation or professional conversation at all in a meeting. It's just getting to know the person.
Yeah.
And maybe you may have a conversation on the professional side, maybe for 5 minutes in an hour. Now we may think that was a rubbish meeting because we only spent like 5 minutes on professional stuff. But for the person on the other side, the 55 minutes that you spend on sort of going through personal stuff and only 5 minutes is more than good enough for them to conduct business with you. So that's the kind of difference, understanding and calibrating your approach on how you conduct business in that region.
To be fair, though, I mean, I'm just thinking, so how do you help people do this? It's like, well, advice to any salesperson is be
Yes.
curious, but just be curious about something a bit different. Be curious about the
Yeah.
person, the individual. Talk to them about them. Ask them about them. Because they'll be comfortable with sharing this stuff. Things that you think, oh, I wouldn't normally ask that. They're desperate almost to tell you about it because they'll be proud. They'll want to do it. They'll be used to it.
Exactly.
Yeah. Oh, interesting.
Exactly. And you always ask, how is it going? How is the family? How are your kids? So that's extremely important and part of the cultural etiquette and politeness.
I remember asking about this once. I don't know why it was Belgian, but it just happened to be. I just said, how are things? Yeah, how's family? He went, why?
Yeah, exactly.
Whereas there, it'll be like, you'll get the full answer and you'll be appreciated the answer. You'll have to give your answer back. And that's cool, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's pretty good
I
when
mean,
you're talking about stuff at that level.
Yeah, I mean, breaking breads together. The
Yeah.
phrase comes from that region, you know,
Yeah.
and that's what it is. I should have trust enough with you that we can break breads together.
Yeah. Oh, breaking bread so important. Of course, food is important in the region, isn't it?
Absolutely.
And quite rightly so. I love the food ever. Anyway, cool. Oh, we could talk about this forever, but I want to try and keep these episodes quite punchy. So, just thinking about yourself, then. Let's practice what we're preaching here. What advice would you give to your 20-year-old self starting out in your whole career, this whole world of business?
Yeah, I would say the first thing in that region is patience.
Okay.
You know, that's a virtue which not a lot of people have, especially sales guys, because sales guys have targets. They need to meet targets. Their commissions, bonuses are linked to that. This is a region, don't expect to make fast buck because it is based on relationship. And that brings me to the second point. This is about building relationships in that region. Okay. Now, the other parts like, negotiation and deal making and whether I'm getting the right price or not, those are secondary, but building relationship is extremely important. And the third thing you said, it's like go slow to go fast, right? So
Mm.
this is very important. But also, you should be able to respect relations. You should be able to understand the culture and respect relations. Because literally, when you are building a relationship with your client or potential clients, you should also be able to respect that person is going to reciprocate accordingly. So those are important things. There is a method to selling in that region. Yeah, as I said, it's based on relationship, but also this region has a good exposure to Western style companies. Therefore, do not think that they don't know how Westerners operate, but you need to be able to figure out very quickly on how you as a Western company can fit in and do business with them.
Well, I like to, no, brilliant. No, I love this. Well, I like to think that the method for selling is collaborative selling. It's about using partnering skills.
Absolutely.
Of course.
Exactly.
No surprise there then. No, that's
And in
good.
fact, on that front, I would say, and this is something that I mentioned to you in the past as well. Collaborative selling is should be natural to this part of the world.
Yeah.
Because literally collaboration comes from relationship first, right? Collaboration comes from understanding each other and what your strength areas are that you can collaborate and combine your strengths together to make 2 plus 2 being greater than 4 is collaborative selling. And collaborative selling is or should be natural to this region because this region thrives on relationships.
Well, that's the idea. I mean, that's why it is a focus for us now. There are some things which people can do more deliberately, whether it be a Westerner coming in and understanding how to adapt. Maybe it's still local, but thinking about how to perhaps get a little bit more salesy and just kind of putting the balance slightly the other way. But yeah, that is definitely the thinking. Definitely
Exactly. Yeah.
the do. So, oh, brilliant. Look, I really do appreciate you spending some time just giving us some thoughts around this. How do people get in touch with you if people are looking into the world of M&A, business transformation? What's the
Sure.
best contact?
Yeah. The best place is on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
So if people go and search for my name, Anirvan Sen, on LinkedIn and look for Fifth Chrome, we go by both the names. So there's one up here, which is with number 5. But if you type in FIFTH and then CHROME, Fifth Chrome, you could reach me. The other, of course, is my email. So that would be Anirvan, my first name. So that would be ANIRVAN @fifthchrome.com. FIFTHCHROME.com.
Brilliant. We'll put those into the links anyway. We'll put the links in the put those into the links. We will put the links in the notes. That's what I'm trying to say. which looks like a good time to finish. When I can't speak properly, it's a it's a good time to wrap the podcast up. But Anurag, that is so cool. Thank you again so much for sharing that. I look forward to speaking to you again soon because I'm sure we will.
Absolutely, Fred. This is awesome. And I would love to share my insights. And I also look forward to you appearing on our podcast as a guest very, very soon.
Oh, I'm all for that. All for that. Thank you very
All
much.
right.
Take care.
Thanks. Okay.
Thank you for listening to the Sales Today podcast with me, Fred Copestake. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe for more and leave a review. If you didn't like it, also leave a review. It's all about feedback and learning.